Welcome back, everyone. Okay, so today's explainer is something I've been incredibly excited to dive into because we're doing a really unique thematic double feature. We're going to take a concept born entirely in the realm of sci-fi and apply it directly to, honestly, one of the most massive real-world geopolitical shifts happening on the globe right now.
It all really boils down to this one fundamental kind of philosophical question. What happens when we have to outgrow what protects us? Whether that protector is some invincible alien superhero from the stars or an economic megacity that has just single-handedly held an entire nation together for decades. At what point does that reliance actually become a vulnerability? Like, when does true growth mean walking away from the very thing that saved you?
So, here's our roadmap for today. First, outgrowing the savior. Then, the Ultraman debate. Next, shifting to reality. After that, the weight of Jakarta. Then, the presidential mandate. And finally, a new center.
All right, part one, outgrowing the savior.
To really grasp this concept, we're actually turning to a legendary piece of Japanese media, the Ultraman franchise. Now, if you follow the franchise, you already know it's famous for its jaw-dropping spectacle. I mean, just going by what Reddit users highlight as the most memorable clashes. You've got Ultraman Z's breathtaking final fight, which literally leaves you with goosebumps. Then there's Tiga's epic confrontation when all the kids charge up his power to become Glitter Tiga, which is just classic. And of course, Zero's intense, ongoing encounters against Belia. These battles are absolutely incredible. But beneath all those giant monster brawls, there's a recurring philosophical foundation that fans are passionately debating right now.
Which brings us to part two, the Ultraman debate.
So, a recent discussion erupted online asking this fundamental question. Does Ultraman always have to carry the message of humanity learning to fight for themselves without him? There's actually a pretty deep divide in the fandom here. On one hand, you have people who really want bold new themes. They're feeling a bit of trope fatigue, They argue that constantly relying on the whole humanity must fend for itself message is limiting, and they want to see the series explore completely different narratives. But then, on the flip side, traditionalists argue that this struggle for independence isn't just some tired trope. It's the core DNA of Ultraman. The underlying goal has always been for humanity to learn to fight alongside the Ultras rather than just becoming completely dependent on them. I mean, think about it. If humanity just disbanded its attack teams and waited for Ultraman to solve everything, what happens when he loses?
This hunger to flip the narrative has actually led to some really fascinating alternative ideas. There's this one quote from the discussion that I think is just brilliant. Someone asked, what if the Ultras protected the kaiju from humans instead of the other way around? Fans are genuinely wondering what happens when humanity progresses so far and gets so powerful that they just don't need their saviors to defend them anymore. Maybe they even become the aggressors themselves. It's a super profound thought experiment about the eventual, inevitable consequence of outgrowing the center of your alliance.
Part 3. Shifting to reality. Because what if this exact struggle for independence isn't just playing out on a TV screen? What if it's happening right now in a nation of over 270 million people?
I want you to let this number really sink in for a second. 56.56%. According to data from the Respublika Academic Journal, over 56% of Indonesia's total population is densely packed onto the single island of Java. The rest of the sprawling archipelago? They have vastly smaller population shares, mostly under 10%. So Java, and specifically its capital, has essentially acted as the nation's singular anchor.
This leads us to part 4, the weight of Jakarta. Just as an over-reliance on a superhero creates a massive vulnerability, leaning way too heavily on a single economic and administrative center creates a literally crushing burden. And this burden is overwhelmingly economic. Java is generating a staggering 58.49% of the national GDP. Meanwhile, these massive islands, like Sumatra, sit at 21.66%, Kalimantan contributes only 8.20%, and Sulawesi just 6.11%. So this isn't just an imbalance, it's a dangerous over-reliance. When one island, and largely one city, is carrying the entire economic and political weight of the country, it inevitably begins to buckle under the pressure.
And the real-world consequences of this hyper-centralization are severe. According to the World Economic Forum, Jakarta ranks as the 9th most crowded city globally. The environmental degradation is at a critical level. We're talking 96% of its river water being heavily polluted. Plus, the sheer density has led to this constant gridlock that causes an estimated economic loss of 65 trillion rupiah annually. It's wild. So much like the fans arguing that humanity must stand on its own 2 feet, Indonesia has realized it simply can no longer rely solely on Jakarta to carry its entire future.
Which brings us to part 5, the presidential mandate.
President Joko Widodo has made his intentions very clear. Execute a massive move from Jakarta to East Kalimantan. But how does a leader actually, legally, orchestrate such a colossal shift? Well, the academic analysis in Res Publica points directly to Article 4, Paragraph 1 of the 1945 Constitution. This states that the President of the Republic of Indonesia holds the power of government, which gives the executive the authority to determine the location of the government's administration. Because the relocation of a capital city isn't explicitly regulated by a specific law just yet, the president exercises this constitutional prerogative to initiate the move for the sake of equitable national development, while drafting new laws to be approved by the House of Representatives. To be clear, we're simply explaining the legal mechanism here, exactly as it's presented in the source text, just showing how the state apparatus is mobilized for an effort like this.
Now, it's worth noting this actually isn't the first time the capital is moved, but the context is entirely different today. Historically, President Sukarno temporarily moved the capital to Yogyakarta, but that was a reactive move. It was driven by a state of war emergency against the Dutch. Today, President Joko Widodo's relocation is entirely proactive. It's not driven by an immediate wartime emergency. It is a deliberate strategic choice to evolve, to distribute wealth, and really to ensure the long-term survival of the nation.
All right, Part 6, a new center. So if a nation must outgrow the old center, where do they go? The choice of where the new heart of the nation will beat definitely wasn't made lightly. Bappenas, which is the Ministry of National Development Planning, outlines some very meticulous logic for choosing Kalimantan. First, it offers a geographically central location, which just makes it easier for all citizens across the entire archipelago to reach their capital. Second, unlike Jakarta, which faces threats from Krakatoa, mega-thrust tsunamis, and active fault lines, the chosen locations in Kalimantan are historically incredibly safe from severe earthquakes and tsunamis. And third, there's a vast availability of state-owned land. That allows for the design of a smart, green city literally from the ground up, avoiding the immense friction of land conversion that you typically see in Java.
So, the crucial point that really ties our entire explainer together today is this. Outgrowing the center means empowering the margins to stand on their own. In the world of Ultraman, the narrative pushes humanity to build their own strength so they aren't helpless when their giant alien protector falls. And in the real world of Indonesia, moving the capital is fundamentally about decentralizing power and wealth. It's about taking the pressure off a sinking, overburdened Jakarta and forcing the rest of the archipelago to rise, develop, and become resilient anchors in their own right.
I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought. Whether we're facing giant monsters from outer space or the very real threat of sinking cities and economic gridlock, is true progress always found in standing on our own? Are we destined to eventually shed the very things that kept us safe in order to reach our full potential? Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep questioning the world around you, and I'll see you next time.